I know that the standard longitude with respect to India passes through something like this. And I would see somewhere around 82.5 degrees east is my standard consideration. That is what is one thing that I generally look into. Now, but what is happening is I will have to understand that when I look at some northeastern region here, what do I see is, do you remember I was talking about something called as local time? And also what is happening in this context is, I know that the earth is moving from west to east and sun rises over east. That is why we were adding time. Now for suppose say I am an individual who is existing here and my standard time is according to 82.5 degrees east. Don't you think there is a longitudinal difference which is existing at this context? Which country has the largest number of time zones? France. So that is what is the fundamental concept of daylight save time. I am saving the time due to the abundance of daylight during a particular season. And when you get to understand that in the context of India also, we see that we will have to talk about certain standard time. And whenever we talk about time in general, we will see that there can be two different kinds of times which are generally existing. एक तो होगा local time और one more होगा standard time. Now, when you talk about this local time and standard time, it simply means that when I talk about local time, it talks about the time is fundamentally determined by the position of the sun. Now, for example, I was giving you one passing reference yesterday about Jantar Mantar, that clock wala concept. And depending upon the angle of radiation, हमने discuss कर रहा था कि which part of the day was it. And if it was directly over my head, I definitely know it is 12 o'clock, right? So this is what is local time. That is, local time is also can be called as solar time to a larger extent because it is dependent upon the position of sun. Whereas when I talk about standard time, I get to see that standard time is more to do with your administrative dimension. More to do with your administrative dimension. And we see all our operations happen at the global level. And all our operations happen at the global level. So in that context, whenever I do some activity in the context of India, I should be able to converge all of my activities with that of the world, what is happening there. So in that context, what I come up with, or what did the world community or the global community come up with? They came up with something called as standard time. Now, I know that what is my reference? I talk about something called as prime meridian. I talk about something called as prime meridian, and this was my reference longitude which was present. And apart from that, what is happening is whatever is considered to be a standard time, we would refer in the context of prime meridian. And the time over this particular region is what is called as Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, right? And where is this fundamentally present? Somewhere in London. Look at the extent of colonialism. The extent of colonialism is such that whole of the world timing should be determined in the name of London. So इसका मतलब क्या? You would have heard about IST. What is IST? Indian Standard Time. And how do we generally represent IST? We represent IST in the context of what? GMT plus 5.5 hours. Yes. Why don't you think whole of this equation will revise whatever we were doing yesterday? Now GMT is where, my dear, GMT is over prime meridian. And where is India's position? Somewhere here. And for us, what is the reference longitude that we consider in the context of India? That is around 82.5 degrees east. That means from prime meridian to reach India, I'm moving east. If I'm moving east, am I adding or subtracting? Adding. I'm adding. Isliye it is GMT plus 5.5. Why 5.5? 82.5 by 15. When I say 82.5 by 15, how much it is turning out into? 5 hours, 30 minutes. That is what is a fundamental understanding of GMT plus 5.5. That is Indian Standard Time. And here in this context, one small analytical dimension that has to be looked into definitely is when we look at GMT, I think towards the end we would look at certain mapping. Now, I know that the standard longitude with respect to India passes through something like this. And I would see somewhere around 82.5 degrees east is my standard consideration. That is what is one thing that I generally look into. Now, but what is happening is I will have to understand that when I look at some northeastern region here, when I look at northeastern region, what do I see is, do you remember I was talking about something called as local time? And also what is happening in this context is, I know that the earth is moving from west to east and sun rises over east. That is why we were adding time. Now, for suppose say I am an individual who is existing here and my standard time is according to 82.5 degrees east. Don't you think there is a longitudinal difference which is existing at this context? Now, when I look at this longitudinal difference that is existing, I would see at least a gap of 7.5 degrees. Now, when I find this at least a gap of 7.5 degrees, what is it considered to be? Around 30 minutes. And the least consideration that you generally observe in the practical sense is you see almost a 1 hour difference that is existing between a place here and a place here. Now, what is happening is, don't you think, in this context, the time that is with respect to the northeastern region and the time that is considered as a standard time with respect to India, both are of deviation. When both are of deviation, automatically what is going to happen? That, don't you think the people existing in the northeast will feel as if there is a waste of time that is happening? Yes, because yesterday I was telling that if it was morning 5 o'clock, it appears as if it is 7 o'clock there. But here it is 5 o'clock means 5 o'clock. So that means there is a waste of almost 2 hours. And what is considered to be waste in this context? Waste with respect to the presence of sunlight. Waste with respect to the presence of sunlight. So in this context, what slowly started happening is, especially in the time periods of 2018, 2019, people started demanding for 2 time zones in India. People started demanding for 2 different time zones in India. One time zone for the functioning of the people in the northeast, and one more with respect to the mainstream India that is considered to be, that is with respect to the 82.5 degrees east. Now, in this context, you will have to analyze that should we go for 2 time zones? Should India be having 2 time zones? Because you see that there are many countries which has multiple time zones. And which country has the largest number of time zones? France. Beautiful. France has the largest number of time zones. So in that context, be it Russia, be it US, be it France, I see there are multiple time zones which are existing with respect to these countries. Why? Because it is due to their longitudinal expanse. Because of their longitudinal expanse, we find that these have multiple time zones which are present. And in this context, when you observe, should we go for 2 time zones? We will have to look at both the dimensions, that why at all should we go for 2 time zones and why at all should we not go for 2 time zones. That is what is our fundamental understanding. And this has, in case if UPSC wants to come back on this, they can go for this, right? So when I look at, should we go for 2 time zones? Yes. Why? One fundamental reason that you'll have to see here is we will have that integrative and inclusive approach when it comes to administration. Because already what is considered in mainstream societies, we see that there is a kind of differentiation, there is a kind of alienation that is generally observed from the context of Northeast. That was the reason why our Doklam standoff was a very, very strategic in the context of India. In 2017, we had something called as Doklam issue and Doklam standoff. That was very, very important because Siliguri corridor and the Chicken's Neck is very, very important for India's strategic integration. So it will bring in an element of integration and inclusive approach. And not only that, the second dimension, why at all should we go for 2 time zones in this context, is to talk about something called as daylight save time. There is one small chutkusa concept called as daylight save time. Now, when I talk about this daylight save time, what do you understand by this daylight save time? Especially this is a practice which is seen with respect to countries like US, countries like Russia. And you would have heard that especially during summers, they would turn back their clocks. Did you all hear about this? Yes. According to the season, they would turn their clock back or they would turn their clock forward. Have you observed this? Did you listen to this? Something like that? No? right? Now, what do you understand by this daylight save time is very simple. Now, if I observe as per my simple approach, I don't need to understand geography here. Now, what is the simple difference that you see between summer and winter, my dear, in general? In general, I see that the summer and winter fundamentally varies with respect to length of day. I can simply say that during summer I see longer days, but during winters I see longer nights. Now, in the context of summer, when I see longer days, that means my mornings are very early and my evenings are very late. That is what is fundamentally observed here. Now, generally, our understanding about a system or our understanding about administration is what we see. If suppose offices will generally start from 9 a.m. But don't you think during summer, the 9 a.m. on a normal day will appear like 11 a.m. on a normal day? Why? Because of sun rays. Because of the sun rays. Yes. And don't you think the 7 a.m. of a normal day will appear like a 9 a.m. of the normal day? Yes, 7 a.m. of a summer day will appear like a 9 a.m. of normal day. That is what it is. It might be with respect to the amount of light, it might be with respect to the intensity of the heat, it might be with respect to the abundance of insolation that is received. This will appear. Now, what do countries like US or what do countries like Russia fundamentally do in this context? Is they will turn back their clocks. When they turn back their clocks, don't you think on a summer day, instead of starting the offices at 9 o'clock, they can start them at 7 o'clock? Yes, they can start them at 7 o'clock. And instead of ending the offices and schools at 5 o'clock in the evening, they can end them at 3 o'clock. Are you understanding this? They can end them at 3 o'clock. And instead of women or children, when they are reaching back home, by the time they reach back home after their schools and office, it becomes what, roughly 6, 7? And when it is 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, you need to ensure this public lighting, street lighting, workspace lighting, all of these to be ensured. Now, when I end my session or when I end my class at, or when you end your school or office at 3 o'clock, women will be reaching home by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, such that the lighting need not be emphasized so much. Are you understanding this concept? That means what is fundamentally happening? The administration is trying to utilize the abundance of sunlight that is existing during a particular season. And why are they calling it as daylight save time? Naam se sab kaam. They're saving the time due to the abundance of daylight. They're saving the time due to the abundance of sunlight. When they're saving the time due to the abundance of sunlight, what is fundamentally happening? That they are able to save upon the safety, they are able to save upon the energy, they are able to save upon the time of recreation, they are able to save upon the time of entertainment that is available. Are you understanding this? Right? So that is what is the fundamental concept of daylight save time. I'm saving the time due to the abundance of daylight during a particular season. During a particular season. Right? On a later date, we would go for an exclusive discussion on DST. We would go for an exclusive discussion on DST. What is the advantage of DST? Okay. So one dimension is I'll be able to focus upon the daylight save time in the context of northeastern section. Then apart from that, one more dimension that I would see with respect to this, why at all should we go for 2 time zones in this context? It will talk about the coordination dimension. It would talk about the coordination dimension, and it would also fundamentally talk about the economics dimension here. Now, when I talk about this dimension of coordination and when I talk about this dimension of economics, what you have to understand is generally when I am able to save time and when I am considering my local time is same as that of standard time. Because that is what is the debate that is happening. Right? In most of the parts of the India, we see the local time and the standard time is converging. But in the northeastern region, somewhere in the eastern parts, we find that there is a difference between local time and standard time. And when we have this difference and when we find this coordination happening, what fundamentally happens is the labor productivity will shoot up. And the time or the available man hours will enhance from the side of northeastern region. The available man hours will enhance from the side of northeastern region, right? Already what is happening is when you look at the northeastern region, we have something called as chai bagan time. What is this chai bagan time? This is the local time which is used by the tea planters in northeastern region, right? So what is happening? The fundamental debate was difference between the local time and the standard time that was existing. So when we have two time zones, these are some of the advantages that will be there, and these are some of the reasons why should we go for two time zones. But we will see that why should we not go for two time zones? One simplest dimension that why should we not go for two dimensions? It might impinge upon the unity and integrity of the nation. And who is the classic example here? We see that although China has a large expanse, you see that China only has one time zone when it comes to administration. China only has one time zone when it comes to administration, and its stand on multiple time zones is very clear. क्या है उसका stand? It says that I cannot go for multiple time zones because I believe in integration of the nation. And when I go for two time zones, automatically what is happening? The unity and integrity might be at stake, might be questioned. And in that context, already we see a kind of secessionist tendencies that are existing in the context of northeastern region. We see the tribal conflicts existing in the northeastern region. We see ethnic-based movements that are existing in the northeastern region. And we see this volatile conditions which are existing in the northeastern region. And when we go for two time zones, what is fundamentally going to happen is in that context, it might so happen that these secessionist and successionist movements might enhance. So that is why they're talking about unity and integrity. Why we should not go? Then the second reason why we should not go for two time zones is confusion and administrative chaos. Confusion and administrative chaos. Now, when I talk about this confusion and administrative chaos, what is the simplest understanding for suppose say, now there is one train which is starting from Arunachal Pradesh, मान लो ईटानगर से, right? ईटानगर से दिल्ली आ रहा है, ठीक है? According to the time zone in northeast, it will start, right? And you're taking a ticket at Itanagar, and you have a printed ticket. Now, what will they write with respect to the destination time? For suppose they are writing destination time is मान लो 10 p.m. That is according to northeastern time. But by the time you reach Delhi, it is 9 o'clock, or it is actually 11 o'clock. It is 9 o'clock. But in the time it is written 10 o'clock. You will feel happy, fine. No issues, because you think that Indian Railways for the first time it will leave you early. It's a different case. But मान लो that you're taking a train from Delhi to Itanagar, ulta. Yes, now you're taking a train from Delhi to Itanagar. What will happen? In that, the train timing will be written 9 o'clock, but the train would have come there by 8 o'clock and would have left. And you will be like, ये कैसे हो सकता है? Indian Railways generally come, if it is 9 o'clock, they will come at 9:30. But they came at 8 o'clock. What is happening here? Chaos. Now, Indian Railways or this railway functioning is a very, very small example I have given you. When it comes to certain safety systems, when it comes to certain security establishments, when it comes to certain critical infrastructure which is existing or critical management systems, what is going to happen? It might result in some chaos. Why? Because two time zones. And at the end of the day, the purpose of having a longitude, the purpose of having a latitude was for what purpose? For human convenience, for administrative purpose. And when we are going for multiple time zones, it will definitely result in a chaos. So that is one more reason why at all should we not have two time zones. The third reason why we should not have two time zones with respect to Indian context, although we have seen multiple debates that were going on with respect to this, is the issue might be politicized. The issue might be politicized. Sub-political aspects. Right? See, any aspect of polarization in India is politicized. है कि नहीं? आप लोग देखा होगा, राइट? जेंडर ले लो, कास्ट ले लो, रिलीजन ले लो, रीजन ले लो, लैंग्वेज ले लो, कुछ भी पोलराइजेशन चलता है. So this can become an element of polarization, and this can fundamentally stir up what? Regional conflicts. This can fundamentally stir up regional conflicts, and this can be politicized, and there is a great scope for it, politicization to occur. Right, sir? Can we write politicization as a factor for not giving 2 time zones? Definitely yes. I'm not criticizing any institution here. My fundamental aspect is I am analyzing a particular concept. And constructive criticism is always welcome when you're writing answers in UPSC. Please understand. Right? Some of you will think that, sir, we should not write about politics. Why can't you write about politics? You can happily write about politics, but it has to be constructive. And more than anything, it has to be substantiated. That you will have to give a reason that why at all are you bringing in that particular statement has to be very clear. If you don't substantiate, bas hawa mein se bol dete hain, then it will be problem. Right? Then it will be problem. Right? So these are the reasons when we look at the debate. Then how should we conclude? इस आंसर को मान लो UPSC ने पूछा है कि that as Indian debate or Indian demands for 2 time zones have been going on, analyze बोला है बस. Right? You know that in the light of this statement, comment upon it. Then we will comment upon, yes, we should go, why we should not go. Then how will you conclude? क्या बोलते हैं यार आप लोग? सर गवर्नमेंट चाहे तो दे दे, नहीं चाहिए तो मत दो सर, छोड़ो उसको, हमको क्यों परेशान कर रहे? What kind of conclusion will we go? मैं एक ट्रिक बता देता हूँ आप लोग. राइट, जब भी हमारे पास कुछ कंक्लूजन नहीं है ना, काफी बार ऐसे होते हैं, व्हाट इज अ कंक्लूजन फॉर यूसीसी? है क्या आपके पास यूसीसी का? है कि नहीं? नहीं है, नहीं होगा. कश्मीर इश्यू का कंक्लूजन क्या है? जब भी हमारे पास कंक्लूजन नहीं होते ना, द सिंपलेस्ट वे इज से दैट ऑल पार्टी कंसेंसस, मतलब ऑल मल्टी स्टेक होल्डर अप्रोच. इसका मतलब मल्टी स्टेक होल्डर अप्रोच क्या होता है? मेन स्ट्रीम इंडियन, नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न रीजन्स, talking about the political aspect, talking about the administrative aspect, talking about various departments. What is happening in this context? We are talking about all party consensus, considering all of these people. After the necessary consultations, then we will have to arrive at the answer. Because UPSC is not fundamentally asking you a solution for a problem like this. Because it also knows that we can't give. Right? But what is the present stand of India? The present stand of India with respect to multi-time zones is very clear that we are only going to have 1 time zone. 1 time zone, right? So conclusion देना है तो all party consensus और multi stakeholder approach, उसके हिसाब से we will decide upon this particular issue. That's it. ठीक है.